Members, it's time and we have a quorum. Before I invite the administration to join us, may I remind members that this special meeting will end at 4:30 p.m. The council meeting will resume 15 minutes after the end of the House Committee meeting. Can we invite the administration to join us, please? May I remind members, if you wish to ask questions, please press the request to speak button. In deciding the order for members to speak, I will have regard to the number of questions raised in previous special meetings, the party affiliation of members, and also the sequence of members pressing the button. Thank you. If I may remind members, you should keep your questions short and concise. I would propose Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. We are now in a meeting. Please keep quiet. 4 minutes for each member, including questions and answers. And I would like to remind members that for this special meeting, as usual, there will be a verbatim record, and in response to the request of a few members, there will also be sign language interpretation. On the consultation report on the and also there's a background brief on methods for selecting the Chief Executive in 2017 and for forming the Legislative Council in 2016 that's been forwarded to members. And just before the meeting starts, the administration has submitted to us the consultation report on the methods for selecting the Chief Executive in 2017 and for forming the Legislative Council in 2016, and the Chief Executive's report to the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress. The Chief Secretary of Administration speaking notes are also tabled. So I would like to welcome the Chief Secretary, the Secretary for Justice and the other Secretary for coming. But without further ado, I'll hand over to the Chief Secretary.
Thank you, Chairman. Today, the Chief Executive has made a report to the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, NPCSC, to invite the NPCSC to determine whether there is a need to amend the methods for selecting the Chief Executive in 2017 and for forming the Legislative Council, LegCo, in 2016. CE's report to the NPCSC. Concurrently, the government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, Hong Kong SAR, has published a report on the public consultation on the methods of selecting the CE in 2017 and for forming the LegCo in 2016. Consultation report. The CE, together with the Task Force on Constitutional Development, the task force, would meet the press to give a briefing on the two reports later. The LegCo has a vital constitutional role to play in the constitutional development of Hong Kong. Hence, we take the earliest opportunity to come to LegCo today to brief members on the details of the two reports. I'm grateful for the agreement of the LegCo President and Chairman of the House Committee to convene this special meeting. On the 4th of December last year, the Hong Kong SAR government published the consultation document on the methods for selecting the Chief Executive in 2017 and for forming the Legislative Council in 2016, and launched a 5-month public consultation to prepare for the constitutional procedures to be taken by the Chief Executive as regards whether there is a need to amend the two electoral methods. During the public consultation period, the task force led by me consulted the community widely through the different channels so as to collect views on the methods for selecting the CE in 2017 and for forming the LegCo in 2016 from among the LegCo, district councils, organizations and individuals of different sectors of the community, as well as members of the public. The Hong Kong SAR government adopts an open, inclusive and pragmatic mind in listening to views from different sectors of the community. We hope the community could talk and achieve universal suffrage together on the basis of the basic law and the relevant interpretation and decisions on the FPCSC. During the 5-month consultation period, the task force, together with the relevant politically appointed officials and colleagues from the civil service, attended a total of 226 consultation and district events, which included special meetings of the LegCo panel on constitutional affairs, the meetings of all 18 district councils, as well as a number of meetings with different political parties or groups and the members of the LegCo with a view to having mutual and direct exchanges on constitutional development issues. We also went directly to the community to listen to the views of members of the public and the local personalities. On behalf of the Hong Kong SAR government, I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude to all the members of LegCo and district councils, as well as all organizations and individuals from different sectors for their valuable views made during the consultation period. During the public consultation period, we received a total of 124,700 submissions from different groups and individuals. The number received was 2.5 times that of the last public consultation. I'd like to express my appreciation to my fellow colleagues for organizing different types of publicity events so as to enable the general public to have a better understanding of the relevant provisions of the Basic Law and the key issues pertaining to the two electoral methods. They've also processed and analyzed a huge number of written submissions in a professional and objective manner and rendered assistance to the task force in completing this consultation exercise and in completing the consultation report. Today, the Chief Executive has submitted his report to the NPCSC together with the consultation report. The consultation report has comprehensively summarized the views expressed by the LegCo, district councils, organizations of different sectors in the community, individuals, as well as relevant opinion polls conducted by different organizations during the consultation period. Apart from the two reports, we've also included all the written submissions received and the relevant opinion polls conducted during the consultation period in 45 volumes of appendices to the consultation report. They've all been uploaded to the website on constitutional development www.2017.gov.hk for public inspection. The consultation report includes analysis of the views received during the consultation period according to the key issues set out in the consultation document published by the task force last December. To reflect truthfully the views received and to be objective and fair, apart from presenting the majority or more common views of the community, the consultation report has also set out other views collected as far as practicable. As regards the key issues relating to the methods for selecting the CE in 2017 and for forming LegCo in 2016, the CE's report to NPCSC and the consultation report set out the following major observations and conclusion. Overall views. Point number 1, the Hong Kong community is generally eager to see the implementation of universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017. 2, the community generally agrees that the discussion should be made on the basis of the Basic Law and the relevant interpretation and decisions of the NPCSC and in a rational and pragmatic manner with a view to forging consensus for attaining universal suffrage for the CE election. 3, the community generally agrees that successful implementation of universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017 will bring about positive impact on the policy implementation, economy and livelihood matters in Hong Kong in the future, and hence sustained development and the long-term prosperity and stability for Hong Kong. 4. The community generally agrees that the CE should be a person who loves the country and loves Hong Kong. Methods for selecting the Chief Executive. The mainstream opinion is that Article 45 of the Basic Law has already made clear that the power to nominate CE candidates is vested in the nominating committee, NC, only, and that the NC has a substantive power to nominate. Such power of nomination must not be undermined or bypassed directly or indirectly. As regards the composition of the NC, there are relatively more views that the composition of the MC should be decided by reference to the existing methods of forming the election committee, EC, that is composed of 4 sectors in equal proportions in order to meet the requirement for being broadly representative. At the same time, there are considerable views that the number of seats of NC should be suitably increased pro rata across the 4 sectors to accommodate the new subsectors or to enhance representativeness of existing subsectors. However, there are also a number of views that the NC should be of the same size as the current EC, that is 1,200 members, and that if there is a need to increase its size, the total number of members should not exceed 1,600. There are different views on how the NC should nominate CE candidates in accordance with democratic procedures. Some consider that the nominating procedures may be divided into 2 stages. In the first stage, the persons contending for nomination shall be recommended by a certain number of NC members, and in the second stage, the NC shall nominate a number of candidates amongst the persons so recommended. There are quite a number of views considering that the person contending for nomination has to obtain support from at least a certain proportion of members of the NC in order to formally become a candidate, so as to demonstrate that such a person has cross-sector support in the NC, and to reflect the democratic principle of the majority rule, and to meet the requirement of the NC to nominate as an organization. Some, however, consider that the nomination threshold should remain at 1/8 of the membership, like the existing EC. There are other proposals from some organizations and individuals on nomination thresholds and nominating procedures, including proposals introducing civic nomination, party nomination, etc., outside of the NC. Regarding the number of the CE candidates, there are 2 major views. One of the views is that there is a need to ensure the solemnity of the election and allow voters to have a sufficient understanding of the candidates' manifestos and missions, and hence it is necessary to fix the number of candidates. The other view is that there is no need to restrict the number of candidates. Of those who consider that there is a need to set the number of candidates, some suggest to set the number of candidates at 2 or 3, since the number of candidates in the past CE elections was around 2 to 3, while some put forward other numbers of candidates. Regarding the voting arrangements for electing the CE by universal suffrage, there are relatively more views that there should be 2 rounds of voting. That is, to require a candidate to obtain more than half of the total number of valid votes in order to be elected, so as to enhance the legitimacy of the candidate returned by election, while some views consider that only 1 round of voting using the simple majority method should be held to elect the CE-elect. Method of forming the Legislative Council. The public generally agrees that since the successful implementation of universal suffrage of the CE election in 2017 is a precondition for the election of all members of LegCo by universal suffrage, efforts should now be focused on proper handling of universal suffrage for the CE election. Moreover, as relatively substantial amendments have been made to the method for forming the LegCo in 2012, it is generally agreed that there is no need to amend Annex 2 to the Basic Law regarding the method for forming the LegCo in 2016. Irrespective of the analysis of the consultation report or members' personal experience in the past 6 months, I believe we have all felt how heated the debate on constitutional development is among various sectors of the community. On certain key issues, the positions of and views expressed by people from different political spectrum and different stakeholders in the community differ considerably. To narrow the differences, forge consensus, and secure the passage of the proposal by a 2/3 majority of all members of LegCo is definitely a daunting task. Notwithstanding, I think both the LegCo and the government should make our best efforts to take up our respective constitutional responsibilities, secure the timetable for universal suffrage as clearly provided by the NPCSC in 2007, and implement universal suffrage for the CE election in accordance with the law in 2017 as scheduled. This is the solemn commitment of the central authorities. Leaders of the state have repeatedly stressed in public occasions that it is the sincere wish of the central authorities that Hong Kong could attain the aim of implementing universal suffrage for the CE election in accordance with the law as scheduled. For the present constitution development exercise, the prime objective of the CE and the entire government is to allow over 5 million eligible voters in Hong Kong to select the next term CE through one person, one vote in 2017. This is the common aspiration of the central authorities, the Hong Kong SAR government, and the people of Hong Kong. The consultation report truthfully reflects various views and suggestions made by the people of Hong Kong on how to implement universal suffrage for the CE election, and their views on certain key issues are quite divergent. Besides, as mentioned in the CE's report to NPCSC, we are aware that after the conclusion of the first round of public consultation, a number of groups and members of the public still expressed their wishes and aspirations concerning the implementation of universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017 through different ways and channels, and their views remain divergent. Regarding the key issue on the nominating procedures, although there were professional bodies of the legal sector and other members of the public pointing out during the consultation period that civic nomination was not in compliance with the Basic Law, it is worth noting that after the consultation period, there were still considerable views as expressed through participation in polling activities held by civic organizations and the July 1st rally that the element of civic nomination should be included in the nominating procedures of the universal suffrage for the CE election. Certain organizations also pronounced their stance of genuine universal suffrage and no screening. Constitution development is an extremely complicated issue. It is understandable that there are different views and different disputes in the community as regards specific proposals. This is a normal phenomenon in Hong Kong as an inclusive society. The Hong Kong SAR government respects the public expressing their opinions via peaceful, rational and lawful channels, in particular their aspiration for universal suffrage for the CE election and their determination to uphold freedom, democracy, the rule of law and other core values. The government has listened to all the views expressed by the community and would truthfully reflect them to the central authorities. I sincerely hope that the general public would appreciate that we could only have the chance to implement universal suffrage successfully if we were to formulate specific proposals on the basis of the Basic Law and the relevant interpretation and decisions of the NPCSC. Moving forward, constitutional development in Hong Kong is definitely much preferred than a standstill. Over 5 million voters being able to participate personally and exercise their votes to elect the next term CE is definitely better than being bystanders only. We should have the courage and wisdom to forge consensus in political crevices. I sincerely hope that we can work together with the electoral members and the community to build up consensus with a pragmatic mind and tolerance, and through rational discussions in the next stage. If the community continues to waste time and efforts on proposals that could hardly implement from legal, political, and operational perspectives, and political groups only stick to their own positions and are unwilling to compromise, I'm afraid we will miss the chance to implement universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017 and disappoint the whole community. According to the Basic Law and the interpretation adopted by the NPCSC in 2004, amendments to the methods for selecting the CE and for forming the electoral have to go through the 5-step process. Today, the Chief Executive submitted his report to the NPCSC and formally kick-started the 5-step process. This is a crucial move, which marks the first step towards implementation of universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017. We hope that the NPCSC would make a determination on whether there is a need to amend the 2 electoral methods in August. Well, after the NPCSC has made the determination, the government envisages to launch another round of public consultation around the end of the year to collect views on specific proposals on universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017. Being born and raised in Hong Kong, I love Hong Kong as much as you do. Having served in the government for over 30 years and witnessed the development of Hong Kong, like all of you, I look forward to seeing constitutional development in Hong Kong moving to the next level. Even though there may be heated debates on issues pertaining to constitutional development amongst people from different camps, they're all out of care of the future of Hong Kong. For this reason, we should seize the opportunity to implement universal suffrage. At present, the CE is selected by the election committee comprising 1,200 members. When universal suffrage for the CE election is implemented, the CE will be elected through one person, one vote by over 5 million eligible voters in the territory. This will bring about substantive changes. Chairman, I'm particularly impressed during this consultation that the vast majority of people in Hong Kong are adopting a rational and pragmatic attitude in the discussion of constitutional development. People of different ages, backgrounds, and political positions are very sincere and frank in sharing their thoughts. Opinions expressed are very important to us so that we can better understand each other's positions, and the government can more accurately and comprehensively summarize the views of the public and truthfully reflect them to the central authorities. Finally, I'd like to emphasize that even if the road to political reform is tough, the Hong Kong SAR government is sincere and firmly committed to taking forward Hong Kong's constitutional development. I believe that with the wisdom of Hong Kong people, we will be able to narrow the differences, forge consensus, and work together to lay a milestone in the democratic development of Hong Kong by implementing universal suffrage for the Chief Executive election in 2017. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chief Secretary. Press the button and then you will have a chance to ask questions. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, please take your seat. It is not your turn to speak. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the Chief Secretary's address, he says that there are divergent views in the community. Well, the report is out. You can see still in this council, the views are polarized. Now, it's been said many times during the consultation that civic nomination is not in accordance with the Basic Law, but still look at the placards there. There is still mention of civic nomination. And in your report, there is no clear mention of the civic nomination. Is it because, as some have suggested, that you should try to avoid mentioning things like that so people who are sensitive won't occupy central in advance of schedule? But then if civic nomination is not in line with the Basic Law, it should be spelled out here. So are you adopting a delaying tactic? So people in Hong Kong will still be caught in this confusion. It will be a waste of our time. Do you have to wait till there's a final decision from the central authorities? And then for the next month and a half, maybe we still have no peace, the people will still be attacking each other. So what measures have you got up your sleeve to resolve this stalemate? Chief Secretary? For this consultation report, it's to meet the objective of the first stage of the public consultation on this very important subject. On this very important subject, the first phase of the public consultation is preparation for the Chief Executive to initiate the first step of the five-step process. As you will recall, the five-step process is such that the Chief Executive the first step is that for the Chief Executive to submit a report to the Standing Committee of the NPC, and then NPC-SC will decide whether for the 2017 Chief Executive election and the 2016 formation of the Legislative Council, there would be any changes. So that this report has served that purpose. That is on whether there's a need to amend the two sets of election methods. We have already sought the views of the public, and today the Chief Executive is therefore in a position to give his views to the NPC Standing Committee today. That is, he is asking the NPC Standing Committee to consider that for Annex 1 to the Basic Law, that is the election method for the Chief Executive election in 2017, there should be changes. But for Annex 2 to the Basic Law, that is the information method for the Legislative Council in 2016, there is no need to make changes. And then we have truthfully summed up the views expressed by different parties over the two public consultation period. But then at this stage, it's not time for us to negate certain recommendations or recommend certain recommendations. But actually, in the Chief Secretary's speech just now, she has indirectly pointed out that civic nomination is not in accordance with the Basic Law. She said that the nominating committee is the only organization that could make nomination. It's something so straightforward. Why wouldn't you spell that out clearly to the people of Hong Kong? Why let us stay or be locked in this argument? Chief Secretary, as I said, these are the views we have received in the first stage of the public consultation. Now, over the 5 months of the consultation period, when we came across discussion on certain issues, we have the duty to point out that the discussion should be based on the Basic Law and the decisions and interpretations of the NPCSC. Only then would there be a chance for successful implementation of universal suffrage. So that's why, for views we have received, we will reiterate this principle of complying with the Basic Law. Mr. James To. The CE's report to the central authorities for the 2016 legislative formation methods. The Chief Executive is of the view there is no need to make any changes to Annex 2. That means in 2016 there will be a standstill. You won't even reduce the number of functional constituency seats. Why would you do that? So this is actually the view of the Chief Executive. In other words, he is making this recommendation to the NPCSC not to amend Annex 2. Why? And then in this report, there are different wordings used, there are more of such view, and some are of this views and so on, different, degrees. And then there are over 700,000 people who have strongly expressed their aspiration for civic nomination. Do you consider that some views or the views of some organizations? What do you regard as such views? And then in other areas, you say the majority of the views are, so you mean 700,000 people voted and 500,000 people took to the street and they are just some of the views. Is that fair, Chief Secretary? If that's what the Chief Executive is telling the central authorities, the central authorities will say, oh, so it's just some of the views. Then they might make a wrong decision. Chief Secretary, thank you, Mr. To, for your views. As I pointed out, In the 5-step process, the CE is to initiate the first step of the process. In that course, he has to submit a report to the MPCSC, and it's for the MPCSC to decide whether there is need to change the selection method for the chief executive and the formation method for the Legislative Council. And so we are preparing this report for consideration by the MPCSC. When it comes to the formation method of the LegCo, the truth is the majority of the public views believe that there is no need to make any substantial changes to Annex 2, the basic law, that is the formation methods for Legislative Council in 2016. This is now the Chief Secretary's turn to speak. Mr. Albert Chen, I only warned you once. You don't need to send this to me. I'm warning you. The next time, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, leave at once. Leave the conference room at once. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, you are acting in a disorderly manner. You are disrupting the proceedings of the meeting. I ask you to leave the conference room. Chief Secretary, the public in general agree that for 2 reasons there is no need to make substantial changes to Annex 2 to the Basic Law, the formation method for the Chief Legislative Council in 2016. I'm coming to that, Mr. Raymond Wong. Mr. Raymond Wong, please. Yes, sorry, Mr. Chairman. In the consultation documents for every topic we put forward, the way we deal with the consultation findings is that we would do analysis of the views collected, and there will be 4 sources of views. The first is the Legislative Council, and the second source is that during the consultation period we attended functions held by different bodies. And the third source of information is views received from individuals or different organizations. As I said, we received over 100,000 submissions. And the fourth source of information is from opinion polls conducted by various parties. Now, for the 2016 formation method for the Legislative Council, we have truthfully reflected the views collected. In this council, the pro-establishment camp members believe there is no need to make any substantial changes to the formation method for LegCo in 2016, but of course Pan-Democrats look at it differently. But then if you look at the general views collected, the general view is that there is no need to make substantial changes to Annex 2 to the Basic Law, and that argument stands. Ms. Claudia Mo, it is not your turn to speak. Please keep quiet. Mr. Paul Jie. Mr. Chairman, there are many in the community who believe that if we could not take a big step forward in this constitutional reform process and we could not have true democratization, that means we will have to put up with this system until 2047 before there would be constitutional reform. But my understanding is this. In the Basic Law, the central authorities and the Hong Kong SAR government have never said that this is like a cliff for us. If we miss out this time, then we've missed out for good. And some seem to be saying that there is such urgency. If we don't get it this time, then there must be Occupy Central. Then there will be a rift between us and the administration. So can the administration tell us in clear terms? Or can you ask the central authorities to actually declare a statement that is this constitutional reform is only a milestone, it's just a first step. And very soon, there could be appropriate amendments to the selection method for the chief executive. So then people of Hong Kong won't be worried that there is an urgency in doing this. That's the first point. Second point, on whether the Hong Kong SL government has worked hard to fight for democratization for the people of Hong Kong. Now, what you said, in certain things you said, you seem to have set the final tone already. But can you explain that to the Chief Secretary? Now, in the document you have promised you would do this, but perhaps openly you would also truthfully reflect to the central authorities that you would fight for Hong Kong. Give us that, give us the assurance that you will fight for Hong Kong. You will fight for Hong Kong's values. It's not like what others suggest, that you should exercise expectation management, so you dare not say too much too early. And you don't want Hong Kong people to accept this fact too soon. So which is it? Chief Secretary, the public in general aspire for universal suffrage for the chief executive election in 2017. That message has come across loud and clear in the consultation. But whether people think that's urgent or less urgent, well, we cannot really form any judgment subjectively. But at the functions we attended, and when we reached out to the public in our district visits, we could feel that the people of Hong Kong would want to have one person, one vote for the chief executive election very soon. And the next, and by very soon, that's in 2017. Now, the NPCSC already made a decision in 2007, and the timetable has been set down for us. So it's not for anyone to analyze whether this pace should be quicker or slower, because the NPCSC has already decided that we will have universal suffrage for CE election in 2017, and that's totally in line with the aspirations of the people of Hong Kong. So for us, our job is to implement the universal suffrage for CE election in 2017. And in this process, the chief executive has said this many times. He and his entire team is determined, is sincere about implementing universal suffrage in 2017 for the CE election. And that's the message we've heard loud and clear in the first phase of the public consultation. So what follows for us to do is to turn this aspiration into reality, so that the people of Hong Kong could vote for the chief executive through one person, one vote in 2017. As I said in my opening remarks, as to how the public express their views, aspirations, and so on, the SAR government has heard them, and we would truthfully reflect their views to the central authorities, because you have to understand that at the end of the day, we have to go by the requirements of the basic law.
Mr. Wong Kwok Kin. Thank you, Chairman. The FTU basically welcomes the report issued by the government, and having heard the Chief Secretary's for Administration's remark, we believe that this is a truthful reflection and an objective one of the views expressed. However, we have one point that we would like clarification. In para 14 of the Speaking Notes of the CS, it says, if the community continues to waste time and efforts on proposals that could hardly implement from legal, political, and operational perspectives, and political groups only stick to their own positions and are unwilling to compromise, I'm afraid we'll miss the chance to implement universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017 and disappoint the whole community. Now, I basically agree with what's said in the report, that is, the public is generally eagerly looking forward to exercising the one person, one vote in electing their own chief executive. Now, about the CS4A's remark, a waste of time and efforts on proposals that could hardly implement from legal, political, and operational perspectives, are you referring to civic nomination? Because now in the community there are still many who are unwilling to give up the idea of civic nomination. So under such circumstances, what is the government's view on the future of our constitutional development? Thank you, Mr. Wong. As I said in a previous reply, in the first stage of public consultation, we are focusing on the issue of the five-step process being kick-started by the chief executive. We must lay the good foundation, then that is why we have collected public's views for the compilation of this report. In the process, we have been giving gentle reminders that in relation to future proposals on the elections, 3 criteria must be met. That is what's been said in my speaking notes. That is from the legal perspective. We must strictly follow the basic law and the interpretation and decisions of the NPCSC, and it is relevant to all members, because ultimately whether a proposal will be adopted will hinge upon whether we secure 2/3 majority support of this council. At the same time, we need the public support and also endorsement by the central authorities. And operationally, that's the third point, we need to have open, fair and objective electoral system. So if the proposal fails the 3 criteria, then in the next stage it will just be a waste of time, and we will just be getting farther and farther away from implementing universal suffrage for the CE election. Now, CS, I'd like you to clarify this point. Now, wasting time and efforts. Now, do you mean referendum in the community, manipulation by some who are unwilling to give up the idea of civic nomination? CS, I think here I mean various sectors of the community, including the government, the legislative council, as well as the public. This is an important constitutional issue. We need concerted effort in the community to make it happen. So if the community continues to waste time, we are going to miss the chance. Mr. Albert Chan, I warn you again, if you shout out from your seat again, I've not. Mr. Albert Chan, I think your conduct is improper. I ask you to leave the room immediately. Mr. Albert Chan, please leave the conference room. Dr. Yan Chang. Thank you, Chairman. The DAB welcomes the report. This may be the last day of this electoral session, and the Chief Secretary has submitted the report to us in a timely manner. Well, this is in fact the last day of this session, and if the report is not submitted, we won't have enough time to scrutinize the report, and it's still unsure whether we can really implement universal suffrage for the CE election 2017. Chief Secretary, you might have heard voices in the community requesting for genuine universal suffrage without screening. And just now, a member said that this is fake consultation, this is a fake report. So, Chief Secretary. Yes, Mr. Gary Fan. Sorry, speaker's not coming through. I have not counted that. This is not a point of order. Please remain silent. Dr. N. Chang. Chairman, Mr. Gary Fan, I think this is not a point of order. Dr. N. Chang. Chairman, please ask Mr. Gary Fan to read this carefully. Mr. Gary Fan already asked questions at the House Committee meetings twice. Well, Dr. N. Chang, please don't waste your time. Please continue with your question. Chairman, now my question for Chief Secretary is this. There are voices in the community that they want genuine universal suffrage, and there should be universal suffrage abiding by the international standards, and there are members of the public who ask whether this is genuine universal suffrage or not, whether this is a fake one, and what is meant by international standards. For those chanting the slogans, they never actually put forward a proper method, one that is genuine, one that abides by international standards. So what is your response, Chief Secretary? Thank you, Dr. Chang. A genuine universal suffrage means a successful implementation of an electoral method so that we can have one person, one vote in the selection of the chief executive in Hong Kong. Now, the most important task in the consultation process is that we must do it on the basis of the basic law and according to the decisions and interpretations of the NPCSC so that we can successfully implement universal suffrage for the CE election. Any departure from the basic law or any decision of the NPCSC would get us farther and farther away from our ultimate aim. That is why on various occasions at various times we emphasize time and again that the basis must be one on the basic law. The discussion should be made on the basis of the basic law. A follow-up question, Chief Secretary. Are there any international standards applicable to universal suffrage according to United Nations literature? Well, yes, first of all, this is not what has been proposed in the consultation document. And to my understanding, now there is a booklet issued, or the guidebook issued by the United Nations. In fact, we must take into account the unique history, culture, political and economic circumstances of the state, and and the ideology of the state. And we're talking about the state elections. Whereas for Hong Kong, we are a special administrative region with high degree of autonomy, and this is therefore a regional election. There is no comparison to be made. Dr. Priscilla Leung. Well, I think it's normal to have this report. Now, the government is actually a sponge which should absorb all views in the community. So about our way forward, Chief Secretary, we must explain to all sectors of community in order to forge consensus as soon as possible. As I understand, one country, two systems means one country only, and for two systems, that means Hong Kong remains a capitalist society. As for the four sectors and the broadly representative nominating committee, I don't think it's directly referred to in your report. I think it might be due to your wisdom, but in fact, in the community, there are other proposals that may also adopt the nominating committee's approach. Some may be more bold, some may be more conservative. So, Chief Secretary, how will you take the lead to help us save time instead of turning into a cul-de-sac? There are lots of proposals. How can we forge a consensus? We won't get any perfect proposal. We can only have one that is acceptable by the majority. So, CS, what is your role to play in the face of all the proposals in the community? CS. Now, one important role of the government in the consultation process or after the conclusion of the consultation process is to elucidate to members of the public clearly that in terms of the constitutional design, be it the basis or the design principles. Now, Dr. Priscilla Leung said I have not reiterated clearly in the report these design principles and the basis. Perhaps not long ago, because we have already issued a consultation document and we have set out very clearly, as Dr. Priscilla Leung puts it, we have one country, two systems in Hong Kong, and we are just one special administrative region. We're talking about a regional election for the chief executive of this region. And we also emphasize the 4 principles, and that is to take into account the interests of all sectors of community and to facilitate economic development. And in the future, the government will be responsible for explaining these principles.
Dr. Priscilla Leung. Yes, if I could follow up. Now, recently there are over hundreds of thousands of people supporting civic nomination, which is against the basic law. Well, it's like if you give $100,000 to everyone, everybody would go and vote. But if you say that if you give out $100,000 to everybody, but we have to increase the tax, then people may think twice. So maybe you have to explain the possible cost. The cost is that if it's against the basic law, then we won't get anywhere. So about the legal reality, the political reality, how are you going to explain that to the public? Only then is there a chance for us to forge any consensus. Chief Secretary. Well, we said this before. After we complete the first stage of the public consultation, after we've completed the first step of the 5-step process, and if in the second step of the 5-step process, the NPCSC decides that we could amend the amend the selection method for the chief executive, then we will, of course, go into the second phase of our public consultation on specific proposals. And there, of course, we will certainly address specific legal issues. Mr. Christopher Chung. I support that we should formulate the electoral methods for the chief executive in line with the basic law and the interpretations and decisions of the NPCSC. In your opening remarks, paragraph 12, you pointed out that on civic nomination, or the so-called no screening for universal suffrage, there is a strong demand for such divergent demands. They didn't just start today. There's always been the differences in the political structure in Hong Kong. It would be hard to address. In paragraph 14, you said that we should have the courage and wisdom to forge consensus in political crevices. Are these just slogans, Chief Secretary, or do you have any concrete proposals to forge broadest possible consensus and address the differences or resolve the differences? Chief Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said earlier, if we want to implement universal suffrage for the election, we all have to work together. That's why I said that we should have the courage and wisdom to forge consensus in political crevices. And by we, it includes all of you here. We have to be pragmatic. We have to stay calm, and we should sit down together to plan for the constitutional reform for Hong Kong. So in this process, I very much hope that after we've submitted the report, the consultation report, and before the NPCSC makes its decision, I hope we will still be in close communication with members here. And it's hoped that through this communication, we are able to narrow our differences somewhat. As to whether we could forge consensus, I would not dare to hope at this point, but we will try our very best. Chief Secretary. You shouldn't just pass the buck to us, Chief Secretary. You are the Chief Secretary. You are part of the SAR government. You have to find a way to govern the SAR effectively. There are all these issues arising in the region. Of course, it's not easy to resolve, but as the government, you have to try your best to find ways to resolve these issues. You know, we are not on talking terms with our neighbors there. Definitely, we are at opposite ends. We are the establishment camp. They are the opposition camp. It's hard for us to come to any consensus, but as the government, you should use the wisdom to try to address this conflict and forge consensus. Are you saying that the government is in no position to do that? Mr. Chung. Now, if Mr. Chung thinks he can't talk to other members, it's fine, because I will talk to you separately. No, I'm asking whether you can't talk to them. Does it mean that's the case? Chief Secretary. Oh, no, I don't think it's come to that yet. and I believe the majority of members in the Council would like to stay in the dialogue. And from what members said recently, I note that they still wish to see communication, and they wish to find a way for us to achieve universal suffrage. Chairman, my question for the Chief Secretary is whether you have confidence that you're able to accomplish this task. This is a task handed over to you by the central authorities. Chief Secretary, as I said in my opening remarks, there are differences in opinions, and in fact views are divergent. We do not have enough confidence, but we have certainly enough sincerity, and we hope that together with members and of this Council, members of the public, we could continue to discuss the matter. Because I believe members here attach great importance to public opinions. If in the past 5 months, the public have expressed a strong aspiration for universal suffrage for DC election, I'm sure members will think very carefully and find ways to meet these aspirations. Mr. Ma-Fong Kwok. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I've read the report for the NPCSC, and I heard the Chief Secretary in her opening remarks. Basically, I support the content of the report, but I noted one point. There is a wide division in the community now. The report is proposing to make changes, but how can the changes be made? How can we make that happen? I've talked to many in my sector. We note that there are people in the community who demand civic nomination. They have insisted on this demand. So if that's the case, there's nothing we can do to help them. I think they will hit the wall eventually. But then for many others, if they know that this is not going to work, they would look for a different approach. Now, I and my friends in the New Century Forum have put forward a proposal to the administration. That is, for the nominating committee, we could increase the size in an appropriate manner. But in that process, how could we incorporate a mechanism so that for many in the community who are keen to be involved in the nomination of the chief executive candidates, how could we accommodate them? So we've come up with a proposal that is, we will increase the number of seats on the nominating committee in the most fair, in the fairest manner. We have no regard to race, age, or gender. We do it by random selection, so members of the public could be involved in the nominating process, and that will broaden the representation of the nominating committee, because that may meet the aspirations of some people in the community. Now, that's just one of the proposals. I'm sure there will be many more proposals in that direction. That is, how could we enhance the broad representativeness of the nominating committee? And how could we bring in a public participation element? We won't call it civic nomination. So can we do something like that to try to address the current situation? Now, Chief Secretary, in the report, there's no mention of these other possibilities. In your discussion or communication with the central authorities, would you introduce this element, or would you let the central authorities know about this possibility so they will consider it? Chief Secretary, I'll give a brief response, and perhaps Mr. Raymond Tam could supplement in a moment. In many of the concrete proposals we received, including the proposal from Mr. Ma-Fong Kwok's political group, many have worked on a broadly representative nominating committee. It's hoped that through a broadly representative nominating committee, we could meet the political aspirations that I mentioned. Some believe that if there is this degree of representativeness in the nominating committee, then they will accept a certain electoral approach. But of course, at the same time, we have to consider the other two factors I mentioned, that is the political perspective and the operational perspective. Mr. Tam, please. Now, about enhancing public participation in the nominating committee so as to enhance the representativeness of the nominating committee. Well, we have devoted much of our report to that proposal. And actually, Mr. Ma-Fong Kwok's proposal is included in the consultation report. The report has been submitted to the central authorities today, so they would be aware of such views and suggestions. On the broad representativeness of the nominating committee, it's pointed out in the report that that will be one area of our work in the next stage. In fact, it will be one of the priority areas of our work. Mr. Felix Chung, the Liberal Party would like to see universal suffrage and one person, one vote for the election. In paragraph 15 of the Chief Secretary's opening remarks, the way forward, she said that the Chief Executive submitted his report to the NPCSC and it's hoped that in August, the NPCSC would make a determination on the electoral methods. And then at the end of 2017, end of 2015, the SAR government will start another round of public consultation on the concrete proposals for this election in 2017. Now, my question is this. If the NPCSC has made a decision on the electoral methods and then the SAR government comes up with a concrete proposal, how much room is there for consultation? How long would the consultation be? Chief Secretary, thank you, Mr. Chung, for your question. We said that in August, the NPCSC will decide whether there's a need to amend the annexes to the basic law. And then we say that by around the end of this year, end of 2014, we will start the second phase of our public consultation on proposals. The first phase of the public consultation is about whether there's a need to amend the electoral methods. And of all the proposals we've received, there's still plenty of room for discussion. For example, just now we talk about a subject, that is, how could we ensure the broad representativeness of the nominating committee? Well, we've received a whole host of opinions on that. And so when we fresh out a concrete proposal, certainly before that we will consult the public again. On the consultation period, I'm afraid it may not be as long as that for the first phase of consultation. If Mr. Chung recalls, that first phase of public consultation lasted for 5 months, from the 4th of December to the 3rd of May. Why? It's because after we have come up with a proposal to amend the electoral methods, there will be a lot more work to follow, like we have to make the relevant legislation, we have to prepare the registration and everything. And all the tasks must be completed by early 2017, so we have a very tight schedule to work to. And that's why for the second phase of the public consultation, it may not be as long as 5 months. Mr. Felix Chung, let's work backwards. CE election will be in March 2017. If we work backwards, when must we pass the relevant legislation? Would it be within the 2015 session or 2016? Well, Chief Secretary, do you have a time frame as to? It seems that you haven't got a time frame as to when the next phase of consultation will last. So what about the legislative timetable? I'll defer to Mr. Tam. Mr. Tam, please. Now, before we have universal suffrage for this election in 2017, first we must amend Annex 1 to the basic law. That means we have to secure 2/3 majority support for the change, and then we have to submit that to the NPCSC for approval, and that will take some time. There will be uncertainties in terms of the time frame that we have to forge a consensus so that the proposal could be passed. For that political consultation process, it could be long or it could be short. It depends on members' position, of course, and of course it also depends on the content of the proposal. And then after that, we'll have to amend local legislation, because for the CE legislation, because there will be universal suffrage, so we have to rewrite the entire ordinance. And after that, there will be bylaws, regulations and guidelines for this election, and then we do voters registration, and only after that we could form the nominating committee, and only then could we have this election. So for the local legislation amendment and for the consultation with this council and so on. At this point, we are not able to gauge exactly how long the process may last. Ms. Sit Ho. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think a government could pitch itself against its people. The SAL government can't do that. The Central People's Government can't do that. Now, we've had this walk for 18 days across 18 districts. We have 790,000 people who took part in the vote. Over 500,000 people marched. How did the SAL government respond to these aspirations? In the morning of the 2nd of July, the SAL government arrested 511 people. I have to state this solemnly to the SAL government. You cannot try to forge political reform consensus through suppression. You must not do that. We're not afraid of civil disobedience, but we are ready to talk. And actually, we are not being rigid. That's why we've come up with the free track proposal. That's already a compromise. In that proposal, we've accepted the existence of the nominating committee, but we don't want the nominating committee to do any screening, because if there's any screening, it's like anointing the candidates. You know, anointing 3 CE candidates won't be very much different from anointing the CE. Even if we have one person, one vote, we do not get genuine choices. So my question for the Chief Secretary is this. The Pan-Democrats have already taken a step back. We have made compromise. We've come up with a free track proposal. Now we're asking the government whether we could also take a step back. Could you have a proposal with civic nomination as an element? And then there could be candidates nominated through civic nomination. They will be made candidates, and then we would be, because we have to be accountable to the people. No one could have any special privilege. So can the SAL government fight for this with the central authorities? And that's by way of compromise. The Pan-Democrats are more than ready to continue our discussion with the SAL government. But there are some community groups who would like the Chief Secretary to talk to them. The students of the Federation of Students are outside. Would you speak to them in a moment? Chief Secretary, please answer that.
Yeah. Chief Secretary. Well, first of all, I thank Ms. Sit Ho for demonstrating the attitude of willing to continue to discuss with us. As I said, our task force and our colleagues will be happy to communicate with you in the future. As for the Federation of the Students, well, earlier on they sent an email to my office, and I also informed them, because after the special meeting today, the three of us, along with the Chief Executive, will have to attend a press conference to take questions from the media. Therefore, we cannot heed their request to immediately meet with them immediately after this meeting. In the future, should there be any invitation for meetings, I hope that they can be raised as soon as possible so that we can make arrangements. As for specific proposals, how they should be formulated, to what extent can the community's views be incorporated, this will be our work in the next stage. And may I reassure Ms. Sit Ho that through every channel, we try our best to truthfully reflect the views of Hong Kong people to the central authorities. However, we must also understand that for this exercise to be successful, the proposal must be in line with the basic law and the NPCSC's decisions and interpretations. Now, but CS, you must also bear in mind that this proposal should have the mandate of Hong Kong people and also 2/3 majority support of the council. Please, Mr. Ray Chan, please return to. Mr. Ray Chan, please leave the conference room. Dr. Lam Tai Fai. Dr. Lam Tai Fai. Chairman, being born and raised in Hong Kong, I have two points of aspirations and one question on this consultation report. First of all, I believe all sectors of the community and throughout the political spectrum, we're all concerned about the consultation report and its analysis. If the analysis is if there is a gap between reality and the consultation report's analysis, we must stay calm and be rational, because we can continue to air our views rationally instead of resorting to radical behaviors like the Occupy Central campaign. I think the Occupy Central will only cause more obstacle to moving forward constitution development. I believe that for Hong Kong people who long for prosperity and stability, they won't agree that Occupy Central would help them move forward constitutional development, nor will they just sit on their hands and do nothing. Secondly, implementing universal suffrage for the CE election is a good thing. I hope that the pro-establishment camp and the pan-democratic camp and the government can all work together to make this happen. If there is continuous mutual distrust among the three parties, and if there is no communication, then ultimately the proposal will just fall through. Now, CSU said that the community generally agrees that the CEE candidate should be someone who loves Hong Kong and loves the country. I agree with it. I also support it. The chief executive should be someone who loves the country and loves Hong Kong. And I have a question for the government. If the government insists on the basic law and the NPCSC's decisions and interpretations, that is to say, to formulate a proposal that doesn't include any element of civic nomination, does that mean that someone who loves the country and loves Hong Kong will be elected ultimately, and that person will have the qualities to lead Hong Kong? Yes, I agree with Dr. Lam Tai-Fai that the CE election is an important task. It is also, and universal suffrage for the CE election is what everyone aspires. That is why the government is taking on the constitutional responsibilities to make it happen. As for the community generally agreeing that the CE should be a person who loves Hong Kong and loves the country and loves Hong Kong. Now, basically, such a requirement is reflected in the basic law, which stipulates the functions and roles of the chief executive and its relationship with the central authorities. So now in electing the chief executive, there are 3 steps. That is to say, nomination, election, and appointment. So the nominating committee will have to make this judgment as to whether the candidate can meet the requirement. And when this candidate is put forward for voting by the 5 million eligible voters, it's up to them to make this judgment. If the person is not regarded as somebody who loves the country and loves Hong Kong, I believe the central authorities will turn down the appointment of this chief executive. Now, yes, the question is there is a wide divide in the community, and the relationship between the executive and the legislature is so poor. Mr. Albert Ho. Chairman, I think the Chief Secretary understands very well that Article 68 of the Basic Law provides that in order to have universal suffrage for forming the LegCo, it must be done in a gradual and orderly manner. And we also know that there are voices in the community asking for abolition of the functional constituencies and to have more seats. Of course, there are other views, for example, to keep the FC seats, but the majority view, I mean, there are strong voices that there should be more directly elected seats. And on this point, I don't see how at this stage you are mandated to tell the central authorities that there is no need to amend the Annex 2 to the Basic Law, and that we can just stay put. Secondly, you know very well that the major controversy doesn't lie with the one person, one vote for the election of the chief executive, but rather on the procedure, whether the nomination procedure will lead to a truly competitive election, rather than any candidate being anointed by the central authorities. This is a major controversy. However, in your speaking notes and in your consultation report today, what you say is that it is already the best as long as we can have one person, one vote by 5 million eligible voters. In fact, over 700,000 voters in a public referendum campaign already expressed their views, and you make no mention of it. Are you misleading the central authorities? Thirdly, you understand that the president of this council and also a founding member of the DAB, Mr. Jesper Zhang, understands very well that it will render Hong Kong ungovernable. However, nothing is mentioned in this consultation report. This point of view is actually shared by the Pan-Democrats and the pro-Beijing camp. If the proposal is not passed, Hong Kong will become ungovernable. Why didn't you mention this point? CS. On the last point, in fact, it's mentioned. I don't know whether it's implicitly or indirectly mentioned. In my speaking notes, overall views, point 3, it says the community generally agrees that successful implementation of universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017 will bring about positive impact on the policy implementation, economy and livelihood matters in Hong Kong in the future, and hence sustain development and long-term prosperity and stability of Hong Kong. So in other words, if we cannot implement universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017, the positive impact will turn into a negative impact, which means that there will be a negative impact on policy implementation, economy and livelihood matters in Hong Kong in the future. So we also agree to this viewpoint, and there is generally this view in the community. Also, during the 5-month consultation period, as for the method for forming the electorate in 2016, whether there is a need to make amendment. Among the written submissions we received, the views are very clear. The mainstream view is that we have had a major amendment in 2012, and electoral seats have increased from 60 to 70. And is it really necessary to make amendments to Annex 2 in just a short period of time? But you have to deal with the proportion of directly elected seats. The Pan-Democrats ask for increasing the proportion of directly elected seats and to abolish FC seats. We're not saying that this is unanimous. We're saying that this is just a mainstream opinion, and there is a certain degree of consensus. Of course, there are differing views. Mr. Ho, we're not concealing these views. Your party's views are truthfully reflected in the consultation report. Mr. Michael Tin. Now, some 700,000 voters supported the referendum campaign held on 22nd of June, supporting the civic nomination proposal. And another poll commissioned by Ming Pao showed that by random survey, out of 1,000 respondents, over 57%, and I'm reading it out, excluding they'd rather exclude the Pan-Democrats' proposal to do away with civic nomination rather than staying put. Now, the latter survey is one based on scientific data. It should theoretically better reflect the public's views. These two polls are conducted by the Hong Kong U Public Opinion Program, which has the highest credibility, and yet these two sets of survey results differ greatly. So, CS, which do you rely on? And also, now, the worst scenario will be that you don't get 2/3 majority support in the electoral. So, by then, will you come up with any specific proposals, for example, to lower the threshold so that you secure a two-thirds majority support, and also to reflect the views of the 57% in relation to the proposals rejected by Pan-Democrats. CS. Now, about the two opinion polls, both were conducted after the conclusion of the consultation process. That is why the two poll results were not reflected in our consultation report. However, we do attach importance to these two surveys, and we believe they do serve as reference, and therefore on other occasions we have referred to these poll results. There are, of course, different views on the poll results, and this is not for me to make a subjective and personal judgment as to whether we should lower the threshold in order to secure a two-thirds majority. Now, if we just aim at securing a two-thirds majority support, but then it's not legally possible, meaning that if it's in conflict with the basic law and the NPCSC's decisions and interpretations, then there could be a big problem. We cannot just try to secure two-thirds majority support, and I don't think electoral members would agree that we compromise legally in order to gain political support because it's against the rule of law. About the Hong Kong U poll results, what is the view of the task force? That is 57% of respondents agreed that they would rather accept a proposal with screening than to stay put. You must have your position. Do you think this can represent the majority view and hence reflect this view to the central authorities? Apart from reflecting the views, do you have your own stance?
Chief Secretary, I think what is important is when concrete proposals are out, the public views on the concrete proposals would be more objective and balanced, and that would be the basis for taking our work forward. Mr. Leung Yiu-chung. Mr. Chairman, I note the Chief Secretary said that many members here and many in the committee would like the dialogue to continue. That's true. As Ms. Sid Ho has pointed out, many groups in the committee would like to meet with the Chief Secretary. The Pan-Democrats would also like the Chief Secretary to come for a discussion at next week's meeting of the panel on constitutional affairs. But having read the Chief Secretary's report and the Chief Executive's report, what's the point of more discussion? Because you have already formed your conclusions in the report. And that conclusion is identical to what you've included in the framework of your consultation earlier. Now, you said you want us to talk and achieve universal suffrage. Is that a scam? Are you deceiving the people? What do you mean you are willing to talk? How are you listening to the views of the public? Let's not talk about our Chief Executive. Let's not talk about this council. You said the mainstream opinion is that for the electoral election, most believe we should stay put. So what do you take as our views then? You're cutting corners now. You have somehow turned all these views into the mainstream views. Have you noticed that since 2010 to now, most opinion polls believe that we should abolish all functional constituencies. We should have a complete direct election. And in recent opinion polls, many have said that the functional constituencies stand in the way of the operation of the council, and that's a fact. But then you brushed it aside. You said that's just a minority view, and you even put forward the recommendation to keep things unchanged. So how can that be a case of you listening to people or talking to the people? And for the C election, we've kept demanding civic nomination. But in your consultation, when you came to meet with the groups, you didn't listen to them. If you had listened to them, you would at least respond by saying what's wrong with civic nomination. But no, you just stuck to your line. So how come there's any discussion? Not at all. And then just now, Chief Secretary, you stressed that you would like more discussion with us. On what? Are you going to keep us in a bird cage as we discuss? The consultation report this time is exactly the same as the framework laid down in the last term. You're just changing the name of the election committee to nominating committee. That's the only difference, but the content is exactly the same. The substance is exactly the same. Now, already at the last term, there was an undertaking for one person, one vote. You try to package it as a new idea this term around, but it's not new. It's been promised before. So, Chief Secretary, you kept saying you want to talk about what? Chief Secretary, please be brief. Now, we would like to talk in relation to the next phase of our work. That is, say, at the end of August, the MPCSC makes a decision that we could amend the electoral methods for the CE election. Then we have to put forward concrete proposals to the community. So that will... You've said that many times, Chief Secretary. Please allow the Chief Secretary to answer. But I want to know what you want to talk to us about. You know, there are many groups in the community. They've put forward proposals and ideas. They are so different than what you just said. So if we are going to talk, is it just that we just tell you what we think and you tell us what you think and there's actually no communication? Is that the case? Mr. Dennis Kwok. Mr. Chairman, the Bar Association published a statement a few days ago to warn you clearly not to take the submissions of the Bar Association out of context. Well, they have foresight in issuing that statement because exactly that's what this report has done. You have taken the views of the Bar Association out of context. You've only mentioned that the civic nomination is unconstitutional. I'm referring to paragraph 14 of the CE's report. It mentions that some legal professional groups say that the civic nomination is not in line with the basic law. That's all you mentioned in this report. But then you have not mentioned in the same submission of the Bar Association, they've spelled out clearly where the line should be drawn for screening. In the past year or so, in the discussion over constitutional reform in the community, we've always focused on whether there is screening. I believe the task force members know very well that's actually the focus of the discussion on constitutional reform, that is whether there would be screening. And in this respect, this report is useless. The Bar Association has said in the submission where the line should be drawn for screening. There must not be block votes and there must be not a round of election first by the nominating committee, because the nominating committee is only to make nominations. It's not to elect anyone. And then there must be true and genuine choices for the people of Hong Kong. And that's where the line is drawn as to what is considered screening and what is not. But then in this report, you made no mention of that at all. In paragraph 14 of the CE's report, you only partially quoted from the legal sector to say that civic nomination is not in compliance with the basic law. You have not explained at all what the legal professionals think about what is meant by screening. So if that is not screening of views, what is? Now, this is an important subject. What is screening? And in this report, there is nothing on it at all. So how can you be answerable to the people of Hong Kong? How can you submit a report like this to Beijing? Chief Secretary. Well, our report is not much different than the understanding of Mr. Dennis Kwok. We want to, well, there are so many different views. In some cases, because there are so many different views, you can't say there is a mainstream view or a general view. And that's exactly on the point on how nominations could be made by the nominating committee in accordance with democratic procedures. We own up to that. That's why in the 5-month consultation period we have many different views. That's why we dare not say there is any mainstream view on the issue. And that's exactly what we need to work on ahead of us. Now, I didn't get to answer Mr. Leung's question. That is, if views are already so divergent, how could we get anything done? That's exactly why we have to set aside our own views. We must not insist on our own views. We must try to listen to the other parties' views and see whether we could work together on a proposal that everybody could support. So that's the whole purpose of further discussion. On the Bar Association's recent statement, perhaps I could defer to Mr. Yun. Mr. Yun? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we must not take things out of context as we read a document. In our consultation report, I don't agree that we have taken anything out of context. Mr. Dennis Kwok refers to the Chief Executive report to the NPCSC. If I may refer members to the consultation report. Footnote 41, 48, 50, 59, and 73. These footnotes have already spelled out the other views of the Bar Association. So if you read the entire consultation report, you would see that for the views of different parties and groups, we have truthfully reflected them in the report. Thank you. Mr. Charles Mock, I've been flipping through these few documents since 2:30. The more I listen to you, the more I feel despair. I feel despair because I think there's no more true universal suffrage, and I'm worried too because I don't know what we're facing. Now, as I read these reports, I come to see what a true fake universal suffrage could be like. I think public opinions are loud and clear. I don't know if you come from another star because it seems that you've heard something different. Now, you say the mainstream opinion is that they agree there should be this nominating committee in accordance with basic law, but that's not what we've heard. And just now we heard from the Chief Secretary said that there's actually not a mainstream view. But then in your opening remarks you said there is a mainstream view. So is it the case that it's in the script, but you actually believe that there is not a mainstream view? And you say that there are more views agreeing that the nominating committee should be based on the current model of the election committee. And then for Legislative Council election, you say there's a general view, you said, that for the 2016 legislative election, there is not a need to make any changes to the basic law. Now, hundreds of thousands of people took to the street. They have asked loud and clear for the abolition of functional constituencies. I don't know why you haven't heard that. Instead, you just say that there are some groups who've asked for civic nomination or party nomination. So you just mentioned it, and that's it. It's not that you haven't even mentioned it. It's true. But if that's not fake consultation, what is? Because even in your opening remarks, you said that you have found that there are divergent views on the matter. So there's a need to narrow down differences. If that's the case, how come there is mainstream view or general view? That's contradictory. And another point, Mr. Chairman. I find that there are 2 points not at all mentioned in this report. One is screening. There's no mention of screening, so that means there is screening. The other is international standard. There's no mention of international standard. Do you try to evade that? Can you please point out to me where you have mentioned these two terms? Or anything in relation to these two terms? I haven't found it yet. You've just asked us to make compromise. You asked political parties not to stand firm. They must not be unwilling to compromise. But then I don't see on the part of the government or the central authorities what compromises you will make or are making. So my question to the Chief Secretary is this: have you made any compromise? Can you point out to us what sort of compromise have you done as you show your willingness to talk and achieve universal suffrage? Chief Secretary, let me clarify. Mr. Mock said that what I said is different than what's in the opening remarks. Now, I said that when it comes to the democratic procedures, there are many different views. I'm referring to the democratic procedures as a paragraph Roman letter 7 in my opening remarks. That is, I say there are different views on what is meant by democratic procedures. And then Roman letter 5, I said that the mainstream opinion believes that we should conduct the universal suffrage in accordance with the basic law, and to achieve that there must be the nominating committee, because it's only the nominating committee that has the power to make nominations. So those are two separate issues. I'd like to clarify that. Mr. Chairman, have you made any compromise other than asking us to make compromise? Mr. Mock asked about two-term screening and international standard. This is what some electoral members have said. So these terms do appear in our report. On page 13, Chinese version of the report, that's mentioned that some members have asked that for these proposals there must be no screening, they must be in line with the standard, international standard, that it must be a low threshold, etc. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. The task force has published the consultation report, and the Chief Secretary has made his opening remarks just now. During the consultation period, you have listened to different views, and you've now compiled the views here. Democracy is actually just a means. I think at the end we have to come up with proposal, having considered all the views. So this consultation is just a means. Now, whether it be for the LegCo elections or the C election, we have to look back at history. Since there was the negotiation between the Sino and British sides, all the way now, there has been a struggle, a political fight in a way. If some are not happy with the outcome, I'm worried whether Hong Kong will be affected by Occupy Central, and then there will also be filibustering in this council at the end, will bring Hong Kong down. So my question for the Chief Secretary is this: if these are the scenarios we do not want to see, what can we do, Chief Secretary?
Now, as a government official or as a member of the public, we do not wish to see any incident that will harm social order. However, if such an incident does happen, I'm fully confident in our law enforcement officers. I believe they will act in accordance with the law. And just now, many colleagues have asked questions on international standards. Chief Secretary, what is your understanding of international standards? Is it the UK standard, the US standard, the Japanese standard, or the Russian standards? Chief Secretary, now what Mr. Wong said is exactly what I said in my previous answer. There is not a one single political system and a universal political system, and the United Nations also agrees that each state party will have to set up and decide their own system based on their unique history, characteristics, culture, and economy. So there is no requirement of having any universal system. Now, as far as our election is concerned, about the 3 steps: nomination, election, and appointment. Now, on nomination, we need to act in accordance with Article 45 of the Basic Law. For election, we can achieve universality and equality by having one person, one vote among our 5 million eligible voters. As for appointment, the central authorities have the constitutional responsibilities of deciding whether to appoint the elected or CE-elect. Civic nomination, is it the only standard? As I said just now, each state would make its own arrangements based on its own circumstances and characteristics. Mr. Raymond Wong. Chairman, Now, before kickstarting the consultation, in the council meeting, I already said that you are nothing but lackeys, because you are lackeys serving lackeys. This is just part of a script. When you attended the panel on constitutional affairs meeting, I told the three of you to go to hell because, well, I've told you in advance, including those on my right. You want any negotiation within the framework of the basic law, then it's just empty talk. In your consultation report or all the relevant documents, well, you only table these papers today. There is no way for us to read through them now. I've already told you this is a fake consultation. You're just acting according to script. The script is written by the Communist Party. This 5-step process is just a matter of formality. And you are very stubborn. You are unwilling to, amend the wording. It's just a very tiny detail. But I can see that I really pity why you have become a lackey. About this group of members next to me, they have mandate. They secured 1 million votes in the last election. About the Alliance for True Democracy, I don't agree with that proposal. Anyway, in your consultation report, you made no consideration of those views. It's not as simple as what you said. Proposals that cannot be implemented from legal, political, and operational perspectives, and that is a waste of time and efforts. Well, in fact, you could have told your boss that we can amend the basic law. If we amend the basic law, then these proposals will not be hardly implemented from legal, political, and operational perspectives. Have you mentioned anything about amending the basic law in your report? Well, I originally moved a motion debate on for the meeting of the 9th of July, but because of filibustering, unfortunately, the debate will not be held until the next session. And I read out the motion as follows. This council urges the chief executive and the principal accountability officials to resign, and for the civil servants to maintain the normal operation of the government for the basic law to be amended to clearly define the scope of our power of diplomacy, and also to have party politics, and also to enact party laws, and also allow parties to receive political donations, and to allow the chief executive to have political affiliations, and that no written consent from the chief executive is required for such. The chief executive, and there should be double universal suffrage for the chief executive election and electoral elections, so that we can truly implement Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong. I have reiterated these ideas many times. This is an up-and-coming debate. This will be put on a record of the Legislative Council. Members both on my left and right-hand side would say that I should probably queue up for psychiatric treatment, but I think it's the same as civic nomination, only that they should queue up at another mental hospital in Kwai Chung. Is the key is to amend the basic law. Our future is hinges upon amending the basic law. Mr. Raymond Wong, your time is up. Dr. Joseph Lee. Well, Mr. Raymond Wong, with your mental state at the moment and with a shortage of manpower and the hospital authority, you have to queue up for more than 2 years. So let me reassure you. Coming back to this report, I have 3 questions. The first question is on page 8, para 7. I don't know whether the DSE result has just been announced, and it said that our Chinese language proficiency is deteriorating, and I am really surprised by what is said here. Well, there are some views, relatively more views, some organizations and groups. I see such wording being used. Now, here it talks about civic nomination, party nomination, and a few weeks ago a public referendum campaign, and also a rally with over 100,000 people in the street. Now, why weren't these mentioned in the report, and instead such implicit words were used, like some views and a considerable number of views? So what exactly are they in terms of quantity? Why is the Chinese language proficiency so low? Are you trying to belittle the majority view, or is it that you are not really truly reflecting the views? The second question, also about the report, page 3 of the report. Now, there is a mentioning of one person, one vote. My question for the Chief Secretary is this. When we talk about genuine universal suffrage, all three powers should be respected. As a mature and civilized society, all members of the public should have the right to make nomination, to stand for election, and to vote. Why is it that in your report to be submitted to the NPCSC, you didn't make it clear? First of all, there are two views. One is that there should be a genuine universal suffrage that respects all three powers. The second is a fake universal suffrage that only one person, one vote can be realized. Now, why isn't it mentioned? The third point is about page 9, about in fact, I'm a member of the functional constituency, and 2 years ago, when I was returned, I actually got 15,000 votes as a member of the functional constituency. So, if the method for forming the electoral is to be amended, then first of all, you should abolish my FC seat, so that in a gradual and orderly progress, we can abolish all FC seats. Now you say that no amendments will be made, and then by 2020, does it mean that in one go all FC seats will be abolished? Or is it the case that you are trying to save something up your sleeve, and that by 2020 there will still be FC seats? Chief Secretary, please be succinct. On the first question, now this consultation report has incorporated views expressed during the 5-month consultation period up to the 3rd of May. As to what happened after the 3rd of May is not included in this report. And yet we understand that the public may have some views on this, and therefore, in fact, in para 13 and 14 in the C's report, it mentions that, in fact, after the conclusion of the consultation period, there are still voices and requests in the community for civic nomination. As for the right to make nomination, to stand for election, and to vote, there are different ways of handling these rights. In the ICCPR, now the first one can be implemented as long as there are no unreasonable restrictions. Now, Professor Lee mentioned that there should also be universality and equality for the right to make nominations and to stand for election. And also, we're not going to deal with the election in 2020, because for the electoral election in 2020 to be done by universal suffrage, the precondition is that there must be universal suffrage for the C election in 2017. Mr. Chan Kam Lam. Chairman, universal suffrage means universal suffrage. Some may think that if their proposal is not adopted, then it's fake universal suffrage, and that's really unfortunate. We've come to this stage. We all want universal suffrage for the CE election in Hong Kong in 2017, and we need to have a pragmatic discussion instead of empty slogan chanting to veto everything. I don't think this is pragmatic. Now, about the reports compiled by the Chief Executive and the Task Force on Constitutional Development, I believe the views have been incorporated truthfully, and I find them acceptable. In particular, a few days ago, the Hong Kong Bar Association issued a statement urging the Hong Kong government not to exclude proposals which are deemed contravening the Basic Law. And I think the Hong Kong Bar Association would accept the reports 100% on reading them. But what I find peculiar is, well, Chairman, please ask him to remain silent. The Hong Kong Bar Association, as a body that upholds the rule of law, well, please respect Mr. Chen Kam Lam's speaking time. Now, the association upholds the rule of law, and for views that are in contrary of the Basic Law, the Hong Kong Bar Association should have reservations over these views. They should not, on the one hand, say that civic nomination is against the Basic Law, but on the other hand, make such recommendation to the central authorities, and hence passing the buck to the central authorities. If the central authorities really consider this proposal, then this proposal is, after all, against the Basic Law. So what is in the mind of the Bar Association? I think they're just trying to confuse people so that some may think they still stand a chance. I think the Hong Kong SAR government should continue its effort, as said in the report, that all constitutional reform proposals must comply with the Basic Law and the NPCSC decisions and interpretation. Of all the proposals, Chief Secretary, there are many that comply with the Basic Law. In fact, the majority of the proposals comply with the Basic Law. Save and except the three-track proposal, and also rallies and street signing campaigns, signature campaigns. So what will be your next step to reach a wider consensus, Chief Secretary? In the next stage, as I said, when we put forward specific proposals for public consultation, the Hong Kong SAR government can only put forward proposals that comply with the Basic Law and the NPCSC decisions and interpretation. We cannot lead society in discussing proposals that are contrary to the NPCSC decisions and the Basic Law. So is that a definitive tone? Mr. Peter Zhang. We all understand that a genuine universal suffrage means a nomination process and election process. Now, the government is focusing on one person, one vote for the C election. However, it doesn't remind voters that in the nominating procedures there could be a risk. If there is screening during the consultation during the nomination process, then meaning, say, we will have no alternative, and this is fake this is fake universal suffrage. Chairman, I am a member of the functional constituency, but my manifesto is to abolish FC seats. So we carefully consider whether by 2016 we can kickstart the first step for the universal suffrage of for forming the LegCo. Now, it's said that the universal suffrage for the C election and for forming LegCo should be separated, but I don't think so. Does it mean that universal suffrage for the C election is a precondition for universal suffrage for LegCo? Why is it put this way? Does it mean that without universal suffrage for the C election, there won't be universal suffrage for the LegCo election? Why can't you tell the public that these are actually two different matters?
Chief Secretary, Now, in response to Mr. Zheng's question, we have to go back to the decisions made by the NPCSC in 2007. These decisions are binding legally, and it's stated clearly in the decisions that if we could achieve universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017, then for the next LegCo election, the members could be returned to LegCo through universal suffrage. So it is not something that the task force could make up on our own. We just go by the basic law and the relevant interpretations and decisions of the NPCSC. Mr. Zheng asked why is first the C election before the LegCo election. That's exactly the decision, one of the decisions of the NPCSC in 2007. Mr. Chairman, we know that in the whole consultation process, that's a consultation on universal suffrage for both the C election and the LegCo election. Otherwise, you wouldn't have this report to tell us that in general, people believe there is no need for universal suffrage for LegCo elections in 2016. Now, the publicity of the government has never told the people of Hong Kong that there could be universal suffrage for LegCo election in 2016. You've only stressed one person, one vote for CE election. So, are you putting it the other way? You say that, oh, because people have no views, so that's why for 2016 there won't be universal suffrage for LegCo election. If there's no universal suffrage for LegCo election in 2016, when? When will we have it? Answer me. Chief Secretary. In our consultation documents, and as we attended consultation sessions and functions, we did mention that this consultation is not just about the CE elections in 2017, it's also about the formation methods for LegCo in 2016. But it's true, in terms of public response, the focus has been on the CE election in 2017. There's less discussion about the 2016 LegCo formation. If we don't make changes to the Annex 2 to the basic law, then when can we do it? Well, as I said, it depends on whether we could achieve universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017. Now, on the report to be submitted to NPCSC, the CE has said that there is no need to make changes to Annex 2 to the basic law. But then, for electoral methods for the LegCo not involving Annex 2, that changes could be made through local legislation, that process could continue. Mr. Alan Leong. Mr. Chairman, having read the report, an impression comes across strongly. That is, this report is actually to echo the government's position. There's an important conclusion not included here. That is how people want to be their own boss. We want true universal suffrage, true choices without screening. But this point is nowhere to be found in the report. So this report is biased, and this report cannot reflect people's views in Hong Kong. And the clear message from this report is that let's take it first. Take what? Take one vote first. But I'm sure the Chief Secretary and the CE appreciate this. If those on the nominating committee are still from the four sectors, they're still the same king makers, you're just deceiving Hong Kong people of this one vote. You're just cozying up to those in power. And then it will be worse than 689 now. But you don't point that out. You are in the SL government, and still you would not truthfully reflect that in the report to the central authorities. I find that most regrettable. Many mentioned the Bar Association's submissions. Some deliberately fail to understand it, or some take things out of context. But then for people like Mr. Chen Kam Lam, I'm sure it's true that he can't follow their submissions. Perhaps I can tell you how you should read the Bar Association's submission, because I find the submission to be very clear on this point. That is, we have to respect the highest degree of participation by all voters. And you have to respect equal participation by individual voters. So you deliberately evade the question of no screening through universal suffrage. That's our consensus, but you try to shy away from it. But with the wisdom of the Chief Secretary, you just pretend you don't understand it. But for those who really do not understand, I hope after I've explained it, you have come to understand it a bit more. And just now, 2 or 3 members from the loyalist camp said that actually you are trying to dodge the issue, you wouldn't take responsibility, and you wouldn't rule out civic nomination altogether. You're wasting time, you're whiling away time. But I have a more generous interpretation for you. I would say you're trying to buy time to forge a consensus. You don't want to be so rigid at this point. So with the time remaining, because you already gave us a timetable, so it will be likely that in the first quarter of 2015, only then you would submit the resolution to LegCo. Before then, what can you do to achieve a soft landing? What can you do? Now, you've submitted a report. I think the NPCSC would have a meeting on the 22nd to 26th of August. So are you going to do nothing in between? Or what are you going to do to forge a consensus before the first quarter next year? Chief Secretary, you have 10 seconds to respond. After we've submitted the report, we will continue to have discussions with members. That's what we're doing. Let's hope that on common ground we could forge a consensus. Mr. Leung Chi-Chang. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we don't have much time to read the report. Just now the Chief Secretary tried to brief us on the report. I think there's a comprehensive picture of all the views received. Over 5 months you have conducted, there were over 500 consultation sessions, so I think you've taken on board the views from different sectors. So I would say it's a rather complete picture. I have 2 questions. First one, for future consultation dates, could you be more specific, Chief Secretary? After NPCSC adopts the Chief Executive's report, and then there will be another round of consultation in Hong Kong, how long do you expect that consultation to last? And who would you reach out to? Would they be the same as for the last 5 months consultation? That is, you reach out extensively to different sectors and groups in Hong Kong and collect their views. That's my first question. My second question, I asked an oral question at the council meeting before. That is, the Chief Executive must be someone who loves the country and Hong Kong. And from the views you've collected, most people believe the Chief Executive should be one who loves the country and Hong Kong. But before and after the consultation, some people went to the United States and the United Kingdom. They met with influential officials to talk about constitutional development in Hong Kong. For people like that, what if they should run for the CE election? How are we going to assess whether they love the country or not? And in the next round of consultation, on the definition of loving the country and Hong Kong, in the electoral methods, would you formulate any provisions for that? Chief Secretary. Well, due to time constraint, Mr. Raymond Tam has already given a detailed explanation earlier on. Now, we're talking about a very tight time frame here, and there may be incidents that may take place beyond our control. That is, say, when the resolution is tabled at this council, how long will it take for it to be considered and passed? So for the next round of consultation, we may not be able to schedule 5 months for it, not like last time. But even with a tight time frame, we will try to reach those groups who have expressed views in the first round of consultation as far as we could. And now on the question of loving the country and Hong Kong, the general view of the public is that there's no reason we should pick a CE who is at odds with the central authorities, that he doesn't love the country or Hong Kong. Otherwise, how could he perform his constitutional duties? How can he be in communication with the central authorities and ensure the implementation of one country, two systems? But at the same time, there are views that there's no need for any additional legislative provisions to give a definition for that, because the requirement for loving the country in Hong Kong is already reflected in the relevant basic law provisions, say in his constitutional duties, in his appointment, his relations with the central authorities, and so on. Last point I'd like to make, the country has stated time and again that when it comes to constitutional reform of the Hong Kong SAR, is our internal affairs. We do not welcome foreign interference with our internal affairs. Mr. Chief Secretary, could you stay for another 10 minutes so another member could ask question, and then you get a chance to sum up. Ms. Dari Lee. The Hong Kong people feel really sad now. Originally, in 2017, we could vote for the chief executive through one person, one vote, but then there is now polarization in the council. Some are saying that they will vote down this the proposal, so we won't be allowed to have one person, one vote for the election in 2017. It's actually real progress, substantial progress, because instead of 1,200 voters, there are 5 million voters, but they want to vote it down. They say it's a regressive step. And then some have threatened to occupy Central. They want to confront the central authorities. I don't see how Occupy Central could threaten the central authorities. I would say Occupy Central is actually suicide. It won't threaten the central authorities in any way. We have to come back to the framework of basic law. We should sit down together and find a proposal that's acceptable to all before we could implement one person, one vote for the elections in 2017. Chief Secretary, do you agree that the Occupy Central will not make the central authorities change its position? And many are worried that if this round of discussion on constitutional reform fails, we don't know when we might have universal suffrage again. So can you tell us the consequences of failure of the exercise? And with universal suffrage is gradual and orderly progress. Some has asked for us to reach the ultimate destination in one go. So if we fail this time, how can we move in an orderly and gradual manner towards universal suffrage? Chief Secretary, now any act that's against law, that disrupts public order to achieve a certain end, I don't think the people of Hong Kong would accept it, because that will lead to chaos and troubles and will be a bad precedent. It will destroy our peace and order. And then in future, if every time that's the case, that means the SAR government must be held back by such actions, so that's definitely not for the good of Hong Kong. So in response to Ms. Dari Lee, I believe such acts would not lead to would not force our hands in any way. Now, if there is no universal suffrage for the election in 2017, I am in no position to say with certainty when that opportunity might arise again, because the 2007 NPCSC decisions has set the time frame at 2017. If we could achieve universal suffrage by the election in 2017, then for another subject of concern to some members, that is universal suffrage for electoral elections, then we could move towards that. So that's why there's huge benefit in taking things forward here. That's the second point. Third point, constitutional development must be in a gradual and orderly manner, having regard to the actual circumstances to Hong Kong. So that's the starting point. For any political system or electoral methods that have been in place, is there any room for amendment or improvement? Yes, personally, I think there is room for improvement. Thank you. Ms. Dari Lee. Chief Secretary, you've made it very clear. Would you undertake that you would tell the central authorities that Hong Kong people would like to see progress in our path for democratization? We would like to have universal suffrage for the election in 2017. Most definitely. We will truthfully reflect all views to the central authorities. Chief Secretary, would you like to sum up? Well, a quick sum up, Mr. Chairman. In the 5 months of consultation, we have done an extensive amount of work on consultation. We've attended many consultation sessions. The views we've heard are not just only the one that the pan-democrats said they've heard. We've also heard the strong view that we must defend the basic law. In those consultation sessions, a clear message has come across. Yes, we would like to have one person, one vote for the election, but to achieve that, it must be on the basis of the basic law. And I'm sure we all attach great importance to the basic law, and we must comply with the basic law and implement the basic law before we could ensure one country, two systems, Hong Kong people administering Hong Kong, and a high degree of autonomy. So we must continue to listen to the views of Hong Kong in the days to come, so that we could find a way for us to move towards democracy in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.